to know everything. Who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me.
Hello, Pelicans fans. Welcome to another episode of State of the Pels. I've got a very special guest with us today, Jake Madison. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of State of the Pels.
Of course. Thanks for having me on to talk some hoops here, and hopefully we're both healthy by the end of it.
Yeah, barring no injuries, we're going to get through this whole episode and we're going to get it out there for people to see. I want to get right into that, the injuries. This is unbelievable, the injuries that the Pelicans are having. We've got 6 of our 7 top rotation guys out, and we don't know when they're all going to be together again. So you obviously are a credentialed media member, and so what are you hearing? What are you, what's out there being said?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think first and foremost, a lot of this is just bad luck. Now, it's unfortunate that it's bad luck for the team every single year is kind of what it feels like. So people think there's probably more to things than there are. But when you look at some of these injuries, particularly DeJounte Murray's breaking his hand on opening night, whether it was when he fell to the ground or was trying to go for a steal the play before, like those are just freak injuries that there's not a whole lot like you can do to prevent. CJ taking that kind of shot to his midsection, in the middle of a game is not a whole lot that you can do to kind of prevent those sorts of injuries. So Hawkins was trying to battle through some things. Like I think a lot of this is just bad luck, unfortunately. And these guys are missing time all at the same time and right at the beginning of a really pivotal year. But I don't think there's much more to it, right? Like this is the team that revamped their player performance and care staff last year that really seemed to keep them healthy, at a better rate than they ever had been a year ago. And now it's just bad luck. And that's sometimes how it goes when it comes to that sort of thing. Zion Williamson's injury, I think, is a little bit more interesting to look at, but from talking to people around the team, and I literally just recorded my show discussing this, that he's trying to play through some injuries. Hamstrings are tricky. He suffered a hamstring strain, and now they want to hold him out. When you look at kind of his history of hamstrings, he's had 3 significant ones in the NBA. His rookie year in the bubble, he had one that went undisclosed. He had that one against Philly that kept him out for basically the whole season at that point. And then last year, it was a left hamstring that ended his postseason run after that play-in tournament game against the Lakers. And when I look at what he's going through right now, this is someone who's trying to kind of play through some injuries, maybe re-aggravated it a little bit, and now is missing more time. And I don't know if anyone's to blame for that sort of thing. It's just an unfortunate thing. Zion wants to be playing. There's an injury. What can you do when it comes to this sort of stuff? So it's just one of those things that sucks, right? Like there's just nothing to do. And you've got to hope that the Pelicans can kind of just weather the storm till some of these guys get healthy and come back.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. Like it is just unlucky. I mean, unfortunately there's not anything you can do to ensure that you're not going to get injured, when you're playing at this level. I mean, I played basketball in college, and it's like just that level, you have injuries. It's going to happen. There's nothing that you can do that's miraculous to make sure, okay, nobody gets hurt. But of course, being any kind of New Orleans fan here, you are so sick of injuries and so sick of this just seems to be the norm for us. So, and then look, we've had injuries before. We've had, Zion out, like you said, for almost an entire season, but we literally have almost the entire starting lineup out right now. And it is painful actually, because what this team is probably capable of. And we just want to have a moment to watch it and experience it. We're not getting to do that still.
No, but that's really important, right? Like that comes to evaluation with the front office and how do you make decisions on what to do with this team when no one plays? And that's kind of always been the issue here. Would they have made a move to trade Ingram or Zion years ago if they maybe had more data on those two playing together, right? Mm-hmm. Last year, they finally got some of that and it didn't really work. And so they looked at moving Ingram this offseason when it would have been better to do it a year or two in advance of that sort of thing, but they probably couldn't make a decision because of that. So it's just this awful cycle. And I think one of the things with Zion in particular here, while I don't think there's really any blame to go around on this, because by all accounts, he was in good shape in training camp, in preseason, he did all of the right things. Injuries just happen. And I view this as more of his body just not responding in the way that he hopes or any of us hope either, kind of similar to Joel Embiid or some other injuries that we've seen where they're kind of blameless with some of that. How do you determine what to do here? But at a certain point, it's we're just never going to get enough data. We're never going to see it. Maybe we just need to move on completely. And now all of a sudden, that's a little bit of a question, I think.
Yeah, I've heard some rumblings about that as well, which is okay, is it just time to move on? Because like you're saying, it's it just seems like we're full of hope and wishes and like the what if and what could be. And at some point you have to say, okay, are we really we just need the actual players to get the minutes, out there.
Look, you can have all the talent in the world. This goes to something Mike Detillier always says, right? Like best ability is availability, and they are failing that test right now. And at a certain point, it's like you just can't live like this, right? When someone hits like rock bottom and like I got to make changes in my life here. At a certain point, you've just got to be like, it's not working. We maybe need to pull the plug on all of this and start fresh. I don't think they'll do something like that, but I think it's one of those things where if this rules Zion out for say the season again or is a long-term injury, and we don't know. The Pelicans specifically did not disclose what level of strain this hamstring injury is, and I think they did that strategically. Like it's just going to raise more questions than answers eventually, I think, when it comes to this team. And at a certain point, you just can't have these questions anymore.
And I think, Zion, like you said, he was trying to play through it. Like he dropped 34 points and then he misses the next game with the injury. Then he's not even on the bench for the next game with the injury. Then he comes back, he plays, then he goes to Orlando, doesn't play. Like it just seems like, I think the Pelicans are not giving answers, which of course they don't have to, but it is raising a lot of questions. Like, is there something else really going on here?
Yeah, look, and they've partially done that to themselves, right? Like the fan base is furious right now, and rightfully so, in my opinion, because they haven't always been transparent with his injuries. And while I don't think they need to be, you've got to then expect kind of a level of backlash when it comes to that sort of thing. And I don't think they did a good job communicating this injury either, right? Like, why did it take until Saturday morning to get imaging done when there was clearly something going on, right? Like, Zion checked out of that Cavs game, came back in and played well. And after the game said like he was fine. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, no, he's not playing on Friday. And we're like, wait, it's the other leg now?
Yeah.
There's some stuff that like, even if it's all innocent and we just take it at face value, no one's going to believe based on things that have happened in the past.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And so let's kind of shift a little bit to Ingram, and he's having a great year so far. The Pelicans are only 3-7. Without Ingram out there, I mean, I don't even know what this team would be looking like right now.
No, he's played well. I don't think he's done exactly what they want him to do, but for the most part, with how injured this team has been, I don't have a lot of complaints about Brandon Ingram here. And you've seen versions of him that you go, oh, the Pelicans need to pay that dude. That's kind of been the big thing. And one of the things I've been saying all off season was if Ingram wants that big time contract, if he wants to go get his bag, the team that's going to give him the most money is the New Orleans Pelicans. If he plays well and fits into what they're doing, they're not going to just let him walk for nothing because that's what they'd be facing this offseason. They'll overpay for him. A team that is trying to rebuild or improve might not necessarily overpay for Brandon Ingram, but a team that just won a bunch of games, if the Pelicans do, made the playoffs, and Ingram was the second best player on the team, you're not going to let him leave. You're going to pay him. So it was in his best interest to kind of fit into what this team has wanted from him. And he's been doing a lot of that. He's taking more 3-pointers this season than he has in the past couple of years, up to 6.5 per game. That's a pretty significant number for him. At times, you've seen the aggression from him when he's attacking the basket and some of that less mid-range. He's still going to be Brandon Ingram. He's still going to go to his spots and kind of do what he does because there's a level of comfort in that. But he's definitely tried to adapt based on what they've needed. And it's still a work in progress and it's going forward. But, he's kind of giving you what you want. He's also available. And we said that goes a real long way with, a team right now. So I think he's been really good. Defensively, he's about the same, but he's taking those kind of early offense threes where he's coming off of a screen set by Misi or Tice or someone else. And instead of just kind of going into the mid-range spot, he's like, you know what? You went under the screen on me. I'm going to pull up from 3. And you've wanted to kind of see those pull-up 3-pointers improve. And he's doing that. That's the type of thing that is going to help the Pelicans offense for a variety of reasons. This is why the team has wanted him to do this for a while. One, that helps with spacing with Zion, but it also helps him in the passing lanes. Ingram's a very underrated passer, and you've seen a couple of games from him this year where you're like, oh yeah, that dude can be elite at that sort of skill. And look, if you're taking threes and defenders needs to come out on you, it's creating more angles for those passes. And one thing Ingram is very good is looking at like that geometry of the court and reading those passing angles and finding those. Him shooting threes helps him with that. So it just helps his game overall. And I think he's been pretty good to start the year.
Yeah, I think he has been too. And I think I hope at some point we get to see the actual starting five with, the depth that we have with him out there, because I would love to see what could he be doing if he had a team full of actual NBA starters. I think the guys that have stepped in, they're doing a really good job, but it's a learning game. So they're young. And I mean, you've got Missy, who's rookie, he's played 10 games total in his life. So you're only going to be able to kind of figure each other out so much when you don't have the starting five out there that we want to see.
Yeah, look, it makes it just tough to evaluate anything, right? And when you look at things like turnovers or some guy has a bad game, right? Like, yeah, of course, look at who they're playing with, right? They're literally playing in this game against Orlando on Friday. All three of the two-way guys got more than 10 minutes in that game, right? Like they're on two-way contracts for a reason. We might love Brandon Boston Jr. We can think highly of guys like Jamal Cain and Trey Jemison, but those are guys that are barely in the league for a reason, even if Brandon Boston Jr., I think, has proven he belongs as a rotation guy. You're paying Jeremiah Robinson Earl almost 32 minutes per game right now. That's someone who was on a two-way deal last year and almost out of the league. Daniel Tice was basically out of the league this year. When you look at the amount of fringe NBA guys that are taking starring roles for this team, we shouldn't expect a whole lot, right? That's gonna impact guys like Brandon Ingram. You're not gonna even see him be his full self because throw three guys at him, because who else is gonna beat this the opponent on offense? And you're seeing some of that. So when I see things like, oh my God, they're struggling to bring the ball up the court, because three of the dudes on the court or two of the dudes on the court really don't belong there. So they're not going to defend those guys, and it makes it easier to defend someone like Brandon Ingram. And that doesn't mean he's a bad player. That just means he doesn't have talent alongside him. And what can you do at that point?
Yeah, that's why I do feel impressed with what I've seen. You can see that he is pushing his comfort zone and what he's been able to do, because he is getting double teamed a lot this season. And I would do the exact same thing. That would be my game plan. We're double teaming Brandon Ingram. I mean, he's the one guy that you're going to do that to, especially when you don't have Zion in there. And so let's look ahead to Trey Murphy coming back now and say, okay, we're going to have two guys out there now. What do you think that's going to help with the team right now?
So I'd caution to have high expectations on Trey Murphy's return. This is a guy who basically missed all preseason, has missed the first 10 games of the season. There's going to be a ramp-up period there. And he's going to have a minutes restriction. I don't know how severe or not it would be, but we're not expecting him to play anywhere close to 30 minutes. I'm not sure if he'll be starting or not, likely coming off the bench for the first game, but I wouldn't be shocked if he starts. Right? There's only so much of an impact that he's going to be able to have as he shakes off all of this rust. So this game on Monday where he's making his return against the Nets, I'm not sure it's he's the savior coming in to rescue the team here. That said, just putting a credible offensive threat on the court's going to help. Right? He's on the opponent's scouting report. Teams aren't going to go under on screens on him. They take away his airspace. They're going to try and deny him even getting the ball in the first place. That will open things up for others. And if you want to try and make some of these marginal guys better, having no one defend them or not focused on them definitely is going to help that, and adding Trey Murphy into that too. And when you look at this team's shot profile over these 10 games, they're not really doing a ton of threes, right? They're 29th in the league in terms of three-point attempts per game. Trey Murphy is going to immediately elevate that and at least be able to get some. And you've seen this team run actions for guys from three. Jordan Hawkins in some of these games has been able to get off 8, 10 three-point attempts when he has no business doing that, because he's the only shooter out there on the court for the team. And they are running actions, running him through multiple screens, trying to find ways to get him the ball to generate those shots. Now you add Trey Murphy into the mix, and if you get Hawkins back healthy and Murphy, you have multiple threats out there. That opens things up. So that's going to mean you're getting more three-point attempts. That's something the team needs to do. They also need to increase their rim attempts. Trey's dunks and threes. He likes to attack those hard closeouts. So I think that's going to help there. He'll be able to put a little bit of pressure on the rim too. That's going to kind of change some of this for New Orleans, and I think open things up and take some of the pressure off of Brandon Ingram and Brandon Boston Jr., and that's going to definitely help. So even just having him out there, even if he's not fully himself, is going to make an impact in a positive way, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I mean, let's say, okay, we've got the month of, I don't know, what would you say is your expectation for the end, by the end of 2024, where do the Pelicans even need to be? I mean, I'm kind of concerned at this point.
That's I don't have an answer. Your guess is as good as mine when it comes to this, right? They're second to last in the West right now, but they're so injured. And when are some of these guys coming back? And, so health is going to be the ultimate thing. is this injury for Zion a long-term one or a short-term one? The team said out indefinitely, and I think they partially did that because anytime they've kind of given updates with him where it's like, he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, we all make the jokes about this, then he misses that, right? Like, that's not great. So I think they're saying indefinitely just so they don't need to worry about that sort of thing. And it's not like, well, he should be back by now. You told us he would be back by now. Why isn't he? When you say indefinitely, who knows? That could mean 2 weeks. It could mean 8 weeks for this sort of thing. We have no clue. And so that's a big impact on it. DeJounte Murray came back to being around the team, after that hand surgery. He was away from the team, rehabbing at home. That's kind of a normal thing that NBA players do. But he came back, was at practice on Saturday, on Sunday. Does that mean that he's close to returning? It's been about 2.5 weeks since the surgery. They said that's 4 to 8. But some players heal really quickly, and he can still do cardio and other things like that after that surgery. So does that mean he can maybe return and start making an impact on the court sooner rather than later? When he steps back in game one, that'll be a different ramp up than Trey Murphy was, where Trey was just doing stationary shooting for so long. So those are the type of things that I'm looking at here, that if you get these guys back sooner rather than later, you can definitely go on a run. There's enough talent here to be competitive in the Western Conference. And I look at that 4-game homestand they had where they went 1-3, but even in those losses, I thought they were playing well. You saw offensive concepts, you saw actions. It didn't look like what they had looked like on that road trip where they looked like a disaster. They looked like a team that just needed to be healthy and they would win some games. And in most of those games, they were competitive until the start of the fourth quarter, midway through the fourth quarter, where they just ran out of steam at the end. Yeah, that's to be expected when you don't have your starters and you have guys that are really kind of like trying to step up and play above their level of play. So I still remain cautiously optimistic around this team, provided they get people back sooner rather than later. But if this is like a Zion injury that's a 10-week thing, a 2-month thing, I don't know what they're going to look like at the end of the year. And I don't think that's anything that we can necessarily predict because we just don't have all the information. They need to start winning. The Western Conference is tough, so you've got to start winning games sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you're already out of it. But again, there's only so much they can do here, I think.
Yeah, I think if they could get everyone back, let's say the Zion thing is going to be for a while. I mean, so with everyone, if they can get everybody else back, especially with Murray back out there, then I definitely think can even go on a run with that. And then, hey, who knows? Maybe this time Zion being out indefinitely is going to be like a great surprise for us, and it's only a week and a half, 2 weeks. We'll be thrilled with that. Suddenly,
that would
we're
be
all
so
happy.
good.
Yeah. So, all right. Last thing I want to kind of touch on is there's so much talk about Willie Green, and he needs to go now. They're 3-7. It's similar to sort of with the Dennis Allen situation. You've got everybody hurt, and now they're just losing and losing. I think it's too early to say that about Willie Green at this point. What are your thoughts?
So I was ready to be like, they need to make a change at head coach. I look at that 4-game road trip they had after that opening game, then that 4-game homestand. And that's kind of what I'm looking at here. So let's miss that first game. Let's miss that game against the Orlando Magic here. They looked really bad on that 4-game road trip. They looked really, really bad, and they were somewhat healthy, and they were going up against teams that they should beat. Portland's young, and I think they're going to surprise some people this year, but they're still not a good team, though they try really hard. The Warriors are the Warriors, but they were missing Steph Curry, and while they've been really good even without him, they're undefeated without him this year, I think. You still should win that game when you have Zion, when you have Ingram, and all of those guys playing. And it's not that they lost. It'd be one thing if you lost a close game and lost by 2 points or something like that. They got run out in 3 of those 4 games, and they only beat the Portland Trailblazers by 2 right at the end. They should have been 0-4 on that trip, and all of those losses easily could have been by 20 or more points. That's not great. They were not running any sort of offense. They just looked like a disaster. They looked like an unmotivated team. They came back. They won that game against the Indiana Pacers, and you could kind of see it there. And then in those next 3 games, they played really well. You saw the offense that just needed better players. To me, I found that 4-game homestand to be pretty indicative for Willie Green, that if they looked rough on that road trip, and I didn't care about the homestand. I didn't care about the win-loss record. It was like, just show me you still are fighting, that you're carrying, that you're trying, that you're at least running some sets and things like that. I saw that. So I feel better about head coach Willie Green right now. Had they not done that, though, and you basically had 8 games to start the year where you just looked lifeless, lost, like a boat just that's overturned, I think you would need to make a change then, because clearly something is not getting through to this group of guys. And there's only so much you can do in the middle of a season. You can't change the whole roster right now. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks last year. They fired Adrian Griffin with a winning record because it still wasn't working. You couldn't trade the players and retool like they really need to. So you fire your head coach and hope that makes a difference. That's kind of what I was looking at New Orleans maybe just needing to do. That, look, Willie Green is the scapegoat for this, fair or unfair, you've got to make a change. But I thought they played well enough during that homestand to avoid that sort of thing. And I think your point about Dennis Allen is just like pretty spot on, right? Like he had a ton of injuries and that probably impacted some of their performance, I think. But that locker room, I can tell you from talking with folks, like pushed Dennis Allen out of there. They didn't want to play for that guy. They wanted nothing to do with him anymore. I don't see that being the case with Willie Green. So I think that keeps him here. If this team was quitting on him, like, yeah, you got to make a change. They're not. They're playing pretty hard. They're just as injured as possible. So right now, I think you keep him. But I'd say things are maybe a little bit warmer than he would like right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in that the last 4 games that I saw, okay, they're fighting, and that I totally thought, all right, they're doing everything they can, and they're doing it for him. I do feel like with the Saints, I mean, just looking at the defensive play from last game to this game was totally night and day. I think they were ready for a change. So I'm not done with Willie Green by any means at this point. But I think he's probably on a little bit of a hot seat just because, I mean, you still got to win. It's the NBA.
At a certain point, it's just like your win-loss record is what it's going to determine. This is a results-oriented business, and even if you're doing things right, like I'm a big believer in process over results. Like do the right things, and good things should follow from that. But sometimes they don't, even though you're doing the correct things. Eventually, someone's going to have to take the fall for that because this isn't just a normal job, right? Or you can make those mistakes. Like this is high pressure. You've got to win. It's an NBA team. It's as simple as that. Sometimes it just comes down to your record and you took some chances. You did the right things. An injury derailed it. You didn't do anything wrong, but you got to make a change because that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is great. We could talk Pels probably all day. I know you just did your show too, so I appreciate you being on today. And fingers crossed, the Pels get some wins. We've got some big games. We've obviously got we've got a Monday night game, and then we play against the Nuggets and the Lakers in Friday and Saturday. So some big games coming up. But hopefully Trey Murphy helps us out a little bit, gives us a little spark, and we come out with a few dubs. That'd be great.
That'd be good. Get back to winning ways, and things will get all better. And hopefully we get a little bit of health soon. That's the big thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for joining, and go Pels.
Go Pels. Thanks for having me on.